Tonight, folks, you'll notice the absence of our normal lead-in music. You'll also notice that we're not going into any type of a musical selection to introduce the subject matter of this program as we usually do, simply because I want to devote the maximum amount of time to our special guest tonight, Mr. Jordan Maxwell. Now, I never met Jordan Maxwell in my life until today. I don't really know him personally. I have been introduced to him circuitously through a bevy of my own personal friends, whom after listening to my lectures, after reading my book, realized that Mr. Jordan Maxwell and I have quite a bit in common. And they prompted me, pushed me, you might say, to meet with this gentleman. And I guess that you had the same treatment on your end, didn't you, Jordan?
I did, yes.
Jordan has a fascinating background. He has paralleled my research in many avenues, in many areas, and has come up with the same conclusions, the same results, the same answers to the questions that I have asked all my life. And tonight we're going to be talking about the answers that he has come up with. But first I'm going to ask him to introduce himself to our listening audience. Jordan?
Well, thank you very much for asking me to be here. My name is Jordan Maxwell, as we said. As of 1959, I became very interested in the subject of secret societies and subversive movements. I came about it because of my family. When I was very small, my mother's uncle worked in the Vatican Secretary of State's office as a civilian. And on occasions when he would come back to home to visit, back to this country, he would sit and talk for hours about the intrigue going on throughout the world, behind the scenes of religion and politics and all the nefarious plans that are being fomented by governments and religion, and I became fascinated with this subject. Since then, I have, as I said, since 1959, I have really delved into the subject myself, and I find the more that you find out about this subject, the more you know how much you don't know, because it is an enormous subject that takes in not only the fraternal orders, the secret societies of Freemasonry, the occult societies going back into the most ancient world, going back to pre-Sumerian, and those symbols and emblems which were used in the ancient world are now even being used in our world, our modern-day world, and we don't even realize it. As a matter of fact, things like the oil companies, the automotive companies, the cigarette companies, use symbols and emblems, and of course in government, national institutions, educational institutions. Our world is filled with symbols, and symbols are like the letters of the alphabet. If you put enough of them together, they spell a word, and you put a lot of them together and they tell you a story. The story I am talking about is the secret societies and occult orders that go all the way back into the ancient world, and I believe, and it's my opinion, that they are still in operation today behind our major religions and major governmental agencies. The symbols and emblems you can see with your own eyes, and do some research, and you'll find that they go back into the ancient world. Now, we like to talk about that there's a separation of church and state in America. The fact of the matter is no such separation exists. There is a very direct connection between the religious establishment in this country and the political establishment. And as you probably well know, has always been the case. All the way back to the pre-Sumerians, the king was always the mediator between God and man, as well as being head of the temple state. The pharaohs, of course, of Egypt perfected this so that they were both gods and mortals who were ruling the state. The Caesars picked up on this, of course, and it's come down through the ages. And even in our country of America today, we have a direct connection between church and state. And let me draw your attention to this, make you an example here. Churches, when you go into most churches, you will find that there are like 3 tiers high, and then the altar sits on the top tier. The same is true in a courtroom. You go into a courtroom and you'll see that the bench sits on 3 tiers high, and the 3 tiers high has been traced in the reference works of Freemasonry to the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry.
That's correct.
Yes, and so then you have the priest who comes out, the clergy who comes out with the long robe, and incidentally the reason why clergy always wear long robes is because it's a female garment, and it represents the feminine connection with God, and that's why clergy wear a long robe. It also has to do with when the clergy wears the long robe, the judge, when the judge comes out, he wears the same long black robe. It's the same black robe that you wear when you graduate from university or high school. The black robe is a very important symbol. It has to do with a very ancient cult called the Saturnalian cult, going back into the ancient Semitic world, the worship of Saturn. Black was a color attributed to Saturn, and even today in Islam, in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, you have this square of Mecca within the magic circle, or within the Masonic circle, and Mecca is black, and it's draped in a black robe. And so this is a world fraternity of secret societies that use the same symbols. But let me get back to the government, the courtroom, and the church. When you're sitting at a church, you of course are looking up onto the altar, and the priest is looking down on you. There is always a fence in the church, and then there's a gate, and only the priest can go through the gate to enter the altar. The same thing is true in a court. There is the fence, and there's the gate, and only the attorneys can go through, and they're called the logos, and they go through and talk to the judge for you. And of course the judge is sitting 3 tiers high, so he can look down on you, and you look up to him. The same symbols which are used in religion are used in political circles, and I am saying, it's my opinion, that what we have in America is a religio-political economic scheme based on a very ancient secret societies and fraternal orders, and until such time as we understand that concept, that things just don't happen. I mean, what was it? Franklin Roosevelt even said, anything that happens in politics, it was planned that way. And until such time as you understand that things are planned in politics, and that there is a rhyme and a reason to things, we're never going to get to the bottom of this. A classic example of what I'm talking about is we here in this country, we hear politicians, the president and the local leaders saying that they can't seem to get a handle on the crime problem, the drug problem, all of the different problems that are facing us as a people, and they just can't seem to get a handle on these things. However, if you put a wrong comma on your income tax, they can get a hold on you. And if you go into the Amazon jungles, they'll follow you, and they will find you. And it may take a while, but they'll spend millions, and they will find you. And they will bring you back here, and they will deal with you in public to show the rest of the people that you can mess around with other people, but you don't mess with the money and the government, okay? So the point I'm making is that if they cannot seem to get a hold on crime, but they can get a hold on you, the question should be asked, how is it that a country 50 years ago, which was a lot less sophisticated, got a hold on Adolf Hitler, and he had a standing army all over the world? They can get a hold on the Soviet national economy and destroy peoples and nations all around the world. They can get a hold on anybody they want, except for the drug trade, except for the crime. And I'm saying that the crime and the drug trade in this country are purposely allowed to exist, and in certain cases even promoted. Because according to the ancient cults of the ancient world, there was a term that has come down to us, and many Freemasons in the audience will readily remember this. According to the ancient cults, there was something called ordo ad chaos in Latin, which meant order out of chaos. Right. So the idea was that if you can create enough chaos, that the people will be sufficiently frightened and will give to you the power and the political power to bring back law and order. Now, there was a television comedy program many years ago called Get Smart. And when people tell you to get smart, it's implying that you're missing something here. All right, Get Smart. You'll remember that on one side in the TV show Get Smart, on one side was chaos, and the other side was control. And I'm saying that's exactly how you get control, by causing chaos. The idea is that if you're going to pull a scam on somebody, you're going to pick somebody's pocket or something, you always have a diversion. You do something to draw the person's attention while you're picking his pocket. If you're going to break out of a prison, you always have the gang fight down at the far end while the guys are crawling out the hole on the other end. The idea is you set up a diversion, you cause chaos, and out of that you can get control, because people will sufficiently frighten people, will give